Is there any type of caffeine or amount of caffeine that is safe to consume?
Now, when I say not really, some people like to make like a little slice or dessert with a little cacao and a little carob. Now, if they do that, and I agree, the cacao gives it a nice bitter flavour, and the amount of caffeine a person would get, let's say they make a slice that's going to feed 16 people, and there's a teaspoon of cacao and a teaspoon of carob. The amount of caffeine that the people get from that little tiny bit of caffeine in the cacao is so minimal. Raw cacao has much less caffeine than cocoa, because cocoa has been fermented, which releases more caffeine. So when you say, is there any safe dose of caffeine, I hesitate to answer absolute, because that little bit of cacao is just so minimal. But regarding teas and coffees and green teas, they are really not the best for the body because of the way the caffeine disrupts the neurotransmitters.
Would there be some kind of substitute for caffeine?
Substitute for caffeine. Let's say someone didn't want to do cacao in that fresh chocolate type slice. Instead of using cacao, they could use something like Roma. Roma will give that bitterness, but it'll not give the caffeine. And for a caffeine drink, I'm not sure exactly what drinks you have here, but in Australia we've got a few, but I think you have Roma. Do you have Caffex?
There's Caffex, Roma,
okay,
Pero, Ticino.
Caro is one.
Pero.
So that you have some alternatives. And in his book, Caffeine Blues, the author states that the painless way to come off caffeine, say a person has 3 cups of coffee a day, well, the first cup of coffee, they have half a teaspoon of coffee and half a teaspoon of, say, Caffex. And they do that every cup of coffee. They'll have no symptoms of withdrawals because they're still getting a little. And then every day they have a little bit more Caffex and a little less coffee. And if they do that over a week, they can usually get off all their caffeine with no bad headaches, which is what usually happens.
What about decaffeinated drinks? I know often people think, okay, I agree with you, caffeine's bad, but I really like my green tea, I really like my herbal teas that are decaf.
Yeah.
Are those safe?
Well, I guess you'd have a look at the process of decaffeinating them, and unfortunately a lot of the processes include chemicals. So that person might not be having the caffeine, but they could be getting traces of chemicals.